Oh, Valentine, We've Lost Our Minds by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pallett. Chapter 1. Word of the Week. My name is AJ, and I hate the L word. Do you know what the L word is? I can't say it. It's too gross. We had just finished putting our backpacks into our cubbies and pledging the allegiance when my teacher, Mr. Granite, went over to the whiteboard. "It's time for our word of the day," he said, as he picked up a marker. "Today, our word is..." And then he wrote it on the board in big letters. L-O-V-E. "Love," said Mr. Granite. "What?" "He said the L word." "Ugh, disgusting." "Yuck," shouted Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. "That's a 4-letter word," shouted Michael, who never ties his shoes. "And he said it out loud," shouted Neil, who we call the nude kid, even though he wears clothes. "Yes, tomorrow is Valentine's Day," said Mr. Granite. "The day of love." "He said it again!" All of us guys were falling off our chairs and choking and gagging and freaking out. "Boys," said Andrea Young, this girl who was always rolling her eyes. "I love Valentine's Day." "Me too," said her crybaby friend Emily, who agrees with everything Andrea says. "I love Valentine's Day." "Can I go to the nurse?" I asked Mr. Granite. "I think I'm going to be sick." "What's the matter, AJ?" "Everybody keeps saying the L word," I told him. "You mean love?" asked Mr. Granite. "Ew!" I shouted. "You said it again! Help! Call an ambulance! I need to go to the hospital!" "You're being silly, AJ," Mr. Granite told me. "I bet you love lots of things." "Oh, yeah? Name one." "You love your parents, don't you?" asked Mr. Granite. "Well, yes," I admitted. "Of course I love my parents." "And I've heard you say how much you love skateboarding, right?" "I guess so," I admitted. "And I know how much you love playing pee-wee football every Saturday, AJ," said Mr. Granite. "Yeah, I couldn't argue with that. I do love playing football." "So there are some things that you love." Mr. Granite had a point. I do love my parents, skateboarding, and football, but I still don't like the L word. Mr. Granite told us that the L word is also about tolerance and acceptance and peace in the world. That's what we should celebrate on Valentine's Day. "I'll tell you what is my favorite part about Valentine's Day," said Mr. Granite. "Getting chocolate." "Chocolate? If there's one thing that I really love, it's chocolate. I think I love chocolate more than anything in the whole world. I guess I can put up with some of that mushy L word stuff if there's a chance I might be getting chocolate." "Valentine's Day is going to be fun," Mr. Granite told us. "We're going to have a party. But for now, let's get to work. I know another thing you all love. Math. So turn to page 23 in your..." Mr. Granite never had the chance to finish his sentence, because you'll never believe in 1,000,000 years who walked into the door at that moment. Nobody. It would hurt if you walked into a door, but you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter. So nana nana boo boo on you. Chapter 2. His Name is Pierre. It was our principal, Mr. Klutz. He has no hair at all. I mean, none. I wonder if hats slip off his head, because they have nothing to hold on to. "Mr. Klutz," said Mr. Granite, "to what do we owe the pleasure of your company?" That's grown-up talk for, "What are you doing here?" "I have big news," Mr. Klutz announced. "He has a big nose," I whispered to Ryan. Everybody was buzzing because we were going to get some big news. Mr. Klutz held up his hand and made a peace sign with his fingers, which means shut up. Guess what, kids? Said Mr. Klutz. Your class is going to get an exchange student. Exchange student? What's that? I raised my hand and Mr. Klutz called on me. Does that mean we can exchange one of our students for someone else? I asked. I say we exchanged Andrea for a video game system. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Andrea rolled her eyes. An exchange student is a boy or girl from a foreign country, Arlo, she said. Andrea calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I knew that, I lied. What country does our exchange student come from? Mr. Granite asked. He came all the way from France, said Mr. Klutz. His name is Pierre. Pierre? Mr. Klutz had to be joking. We all started giggling and poking each other with our elbows. Did his parents name him Pierre because he peed in the air? I asked. My mom told me that when I was a baby, I used to pee in the air while she was changing my diaper. That's disgusting, Arlo, said Andrea. We're not supposed to talk about things like that in school. Could you possibly be more boring? I asked her. Mr. Klutz went into the hallway to get the French kid named Pierre. He was out there for a long time. I wondered what Pierre would be like. We were all glued to our seats. Well, not really. That would be weird. Why would anybody glue themselves to a seat? How would you get the glue off? Mr. Klutz came back into the classroom with Pierre. Pierre was holding a big platter, which he put on a table at the front of the room. Pierre, said Mr. Klutz, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Granite's third grade class. OMG, whispered Andrea. Pierre is handsome. He's adorable, whispered Emily. All the girls were swooning and giggling and fanning themselves and making goo-goo eyes at Pierre. Even my friend Alexia, who is a tomboy, was freaking out. He's dreamy, Alexia said. Pierre did one of those deep bows like actors do at the end of a play. Bonjour, he said. Oh, said Andrea. He's handsome, and he speaks French. Well, of course Pierre speaks French. He's from France. Everybody in France speaks French. What is Andrea's problem? Pierre, I have to go to a meeting, Mr. Klutz said, but I'll be back later to see how you're making out. Ew, disgusting. Oui, said Pierre. Oui means yes in French, said Andrea, who thinks she knows everything. They spell it O-U-I. That's weird. And I thought I was a bad speller. Those people in France totally don't know how to spell. Mr. Granite went into the hallway to talk with Mr. Klutz, so we were alone with Pierre. I am very happy to be in your classroom, Pierre told us. I am just learning how to speak English at my school, but I am not very good at it yet. He said it all in a weird French accent. The girls were still making goo-goo eyes at him. Pierre continued, So I hope you will, how do you say, bear with me. Bear with you? I shouted. I'm not taking my clothes off in school. Gross! Not B-A-R-E, Arlo, said Andrea. B-E-A-R. Pierre said, bear with me. There's a bear with him? I shouted. Where? Run for your lives, shouted Neil, the nude kid. Pierre has a bear! I hid under my desk. I didn't see any bears around, but you can't be too careful these days. For all I know, kids in France bring bears to school with them. Andrea got up from her desk and ran over to Pierre. My name is Andrea, she said, doing one of those girly curtsy things. It's a pleasure to meet you, Pierre. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. Pierre took Andrea's hand and kissed it. Ugh, gross! I would never kiss anybody's hand, and certainly not Andrea's. Hands are dirty. You don't know where that hand has been. There was a 50-50 chance that Andrea used that hand to pick her nose. The pleasure is all mine, Andrea, Pierre said. Your eyes are like pools of water in the moonlight. What a dork. Pierre held on to Andrea's hand way too long. Andrea was giggling and blushing as she ran back to her seat. Then Emily got up and went over to Pierre. I'm Emily, she said, all giggly. Welcome to our class, Pierre. Pierre kissed Emily's hand, too. Your face is like an angel's, he said. I hope that we might become better acquainted. Emily was giggling and blushing as she ran back to her seat. After that, all the other girls in the class went running up to introduce themselves and get their hands kissed by Pierre. Even Alexia! I thought I was going to throw up. I'm never going to wash this hand again, Alexia said when she went back to her seat. There was no way I was going to go up and introduce myself to Pierre. I don't want him slobbering all over my hand like a dog. Mr. Granite came back into the classroom and went to his desk. Mr. Klutz told me that Pierre will be with us for the rest of the week. The rest of the week? That's like forever. How many days are there in a French week? I asked. 7, said Mr. Granite. Wow, just like here. It's already Wednesday, Andrea said, so Pierre will only be here for 3 days. I brought a little, how do you say, gift from my home, Pierre announced. I like gifts. Maybe Pierre wasn't such a bad guy after all. He picked up the platter he had brought with him. It is cheese and crackers, said Pierre. What? Cheese and crackers? That's a gift? I thought he was going to give us something cool from France, like French fries or French toast. Who shows up at a new school with a platter full of cheese? What kind of cheese is it, Pierre? Asked Mr. Granite. It's called Munster cheese, said Pierre. Munster cheese? My dad told me he used to watch a TV show about that cheese when he was a kid. We have over 400 kinds of cheeses in France, said Pierre. 400? Those French people should make up their minds. The only kind of cheese I eat is American cheese. Each slice is wrapped up in its own piece of plastic so you know it's good. Pierre walked around the room with his platter of cheese. It wasn't wrapped up in plastic. It was cut into little chunks, and each one had a toothpick sticking out of it. That was weird. Some of the kids tried a piece of cheese. When Pierre got to me with the platter, I leaned over to sniff the cheese. Gross! It was stinky. I guess they have toothpicks so you can use them to get the smell out of your mouth after eating the cheese. Ugh! It smells horrible, I said. Who cut the cheese? Very funny, Arlo, said Andrea, rolling her eyes again. Why can't a truck full of cheese fall on Andrea's head? That French cheese was gross. No way was I going to eat that stuff. It smelled like it was sitting out in the hot sun all day. I wasn't going to shake hands with Pierre, and I wasn't going to eat his stinky cheese either. That guy is weird.